Hi, I'm Stacey Anderson, also known as the Supergene. Having lived in 9 cities across 3 continents and counting, Supergene Unleashed features people from around the world sharing their unfiltered versions of female empowerment. With a 20-year global career in digital marketing, operating as a leader and mentor, and now as a wife and mother of 3, I encourage you to unleash your own Supergene and become the most empowered version of yourself. Here's your advocate, ally, and confidant. I am ready to inspire you. Let's show the world what it's all about. Welcome back, my fellow Supergenes. Let me ask you something. What if discipline isn't punishment, but power? What if the reason you feel stuck isn't lack of motivation, but lack of standards? Today's guest has competed at 3 Olympic Games. She knows pressure, she knows setbacks, and she knows what it takes to perform when it matters most. But this conversation isn't about medals. It's about mental toughness and resilience. It's about the mindset shifts that separate women who talk about change from women who actually live it. If you've ever struggled with consistency, confidence, or pushing past your own excuses, you'll want to stay with us. Today, you'll walk away knowing exactly how high-performing women think and ready to activate your true Supergene power. Please welcome 3-time Olympian and founder of Roar Fitness, Sarah Lindsay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So if you can please just take us back, obviously it was just the Olympics. How does someone end up competing in 3 Olympic Games? And for your first ever games, did you feel ready?
I mean, 3's enough, isn't it? My first, I was young. I was really young. I was only 21 when I qualified for the first one. I actually nearly qualified for the one before, where I would have only been 17. And yeah, for the first, I don't think it wasn't that I wasn't ready. I wasn't peaking, but that took a lot of the pressure off. You know, this was supposed to be my experience, and I kind of felt like I could just enjoy it and kind of went a little bit for the ride. You know, I wasn't a favorite. I had no pressure. So yeah, the first one was really nice for me, actually.
And that's actually what I was going to ask you next, was about the pressure, because oftentimes in sport, coaches, peers, family, and even yourself, you can put so much pressure to perform. I mean, especially going to such a big world stage. So what did you understand then about pressure at, early 20s that maybe some other women might never understand?
Well, I think the pressure really comes from you. That's perceived. You know, people can put pressure on you, but you don't have to accept that. So I think so much of the pressure was your own standards and how you needed to compete to feel good about yourself. You know, you put everything into it and you train really hard and it matters to you more than anything. So if you don't win, then you feel like you're failing. And the difference between winning and losing is this. You know, It's tiny, tiny, tiny amounts, hundreds of seconds. So yeah, I think you have to kind of not let that come in from external sources, which can be really tough because if you don't perform, you don't get paid. You know, you don't get funded. If nobody performs, the whole team isn't funded, and then everybody's journey is over. So when you look at it like that, it can be huge. But all you can do, I think, is take one step at a time. Just control the things that are within your control, and just tick those boxes off and be very pragmatic about things. If you let emotion come into it, you're going to make decisions that aren't necessarily so focused.
Yeah, exactly. And I could imagine that you also have to have a certain level of confidence in your capability. And so in terms of exuding that confidence, was that something that you feel that you had innately in you, or was that also something you had to train to, be comfortable and confident as well?
I think I still am.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still working on that. I mean, who has the ultimate confidence,
I don't know.
So I think I was confident in my sport. I wasn't always confident that I was going to win. And I was, considering I'm such a risk taker now, I wasn't so much back then because I was too scared of losing. So I didn't want to always put myself on the line, and I should have taken more risks, I think.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to another question about women in elite sport. And obviously, in general, in the past, I would say decade or so, women's sport has become much more in the spotlight. And also most recently in the Winter Games, one of the athletes came out publicly and was talking about how it can be difficult as a woman competing, especially with, having your cycle and these kind of things. So as a woman in elite sport, did you ever feel underestimated?
Within my team, absolutely not. It was never, and it was quite a male-dominated sport really as well. All my support staff were men, my coaches were men, the team were mostly guys. There was, 20 guys, 3 girls, for example. But still, we were valued exactly the same. Whoever was performing the best was sort of top of the hierarchy, if you like, whoever you were. So I never felt that. But obviously, especially within the media, male sport always dominates the headlines, and for different reasons as well. A lot of the time, unfortunately, it's still there. It's obviously improved and it's getting much, much better, but it's still there that the subject is what she's wearing or what haircut she has or something about her private life or what she looks like, which, is a shame when we have the most incredible athletes, and really that's what we should be talking about, is their performance.
Yeah, exactly. You make an amazing point. And that is something that I have seen for sure, is that they do call out the femininity of the woman rather than focusing on the sport. And, when it comes to high performance and, this kind of environment, most women think that, high performance and performing at your best can mean burnout. And oftentimes I see people confusing the two. So what does performance actually mean to you? And how can someone maintain a balance of performing at a high level, but not burning out?
Well, you'll perform at a higher level if you look after yourself. Okay. Self-care is hugely important. If you want to maintain high performance, whatever that means, whether that's in business or sport or anything else, the fitter and stronger you are, the more mentally capable you will be. 100%. So you have to prioritize yourself. And as women, we always put ourselves last. We look after everybody else first, and then the sort of self-care side of things. And that can even just mean training.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate in self-care, is looking after your body and being strong. So yeah, we have this tendency, this nurturing side of us that will always put ourselves at the bottom of the pile, but we have to prioritize ourselves and not feel guilty about it. Everybody feels guilty.
I know, it is really crazy that people feel guilty about prioritizing themselves. And it's, no wonder that you say that, because so many people that I've spoken to actually say the same thing, coming back to self-care and making sure that you carve out time for yourself so that you show up as a better person, as you said, be it in business and sport or even in friendships or in romantic relationships. But how do you keep the motivation on days where you don't feel like it?
I think you can't expect to feel motivated. That comes and goes minute by minute even.
Yeah.
You can't expect, people ask me all the time, how are you motivated? I'm not. I'm definitely not. I don't wake up and think, I can't wait to go work out. I'm not one of them people. Some people really love the feeling. I don't like sweating. I don't like being hot. I don't like my muscles hurting or feeling sick, but I do it anyway and I think that comes down to discipline. I think and part of what you do, it's your habits. So you have to be motivated enough in the first place. And as soon as you feel that motivation, run with it, really go with it and use that to try and start to build habits and making exercise just part of your everyday life. And then it just becomes what you do. Same as brushing your teeth, get up in the morning, go do that thing, and then get on with your day.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points here. And one in particular is about transformation. And, you said that you need to kind of feed off that motivation and run with it. So would you say that that's the difference between women who transform their bodies and lives and those who stay stuck? Or would you say there are other elements that separate those who are able to transform versus those who kind of just stay stuck in the same cycle?
It's whether you prioritize it or not.
Okay.
100%. Every single time. It's not because you're not able to, or there's something physically wrong. It's because you haven't prioritized it enough. Like we just talked about, you're putting other things ahead of that, or other people and everything else before yourself. And if you really want to make change, it has to be something that you're going to dedicate your time to. It's your emotion, it's your time, and, potentially finances as well. But if any of those things matter to you, you're not going to waste your time.
Right.
You invest in something, you get a gym membership, or, book a bunch of classes or something. And if that cost, for example, is significant enough to you, you're not going to waste it. You will go. Or if, taking an hour and a half away from your kids makes you feel uncomfortable, you're not going to waste your time and slack off. So you have to think like, what's really driving you? What's going to really motivate you to make the most of that time?
Yeah. And also when it comes to discipline, which is kind of another element that we're touching on here, is having that discipline to keep showing up and to keep that consistency. What do high achieving women often misunderstand about discipline?
Wow. I don't know if misunderstanding, but I think it is going back to, you think you're going to be relying on motivation. Like discipline, it just has to be structured into your daily life. And it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter if you're in a good mood or a bad mood, or, you're happy or sad, whatever. You have to just go. If you're tired, you just go and do it anyway. And it's consistency is everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, with anything that you're doing in life, consistency will create the result. It's not just, giving it everything on one day or 1 week. It's, does it fit into your lifestyle? Do you enjoy it? Can you maintain it and keep it going? And that's what's going to get you a lifetime result, not just a quick fix.
And to build on that, if a woman who's listening right now is feeling so inconsistent, is there anything that you would recommend as a mindset shift that she could make immediately to help kind of set her on the right course?
I think a couple of things. I think writing it down. So writing down your goals, really commit to what it is you want, and then breaking those goals down further and further until it's, what do I have to do next? And what do I have to do today? And then when we talked about priorities, it's making sure that you have that time and you've given that to yourself. So important.
Yeah. And are there certain things that you do on the days that you feel less motivated? So obviously, exercise and fitness is kind of the core of your life. So on a day where you absolutely have zero motivation, what are some things that you do that just kind of help you feel a little bit better?
I probably just complain more. I probably just moan about having to go do it, but I still usually do. The thing for me, my block is always work. Things come up, and so I have to do stuff in the morning. Okay. And it's not always the best time for me to work out. It takes me longer now. I'm a little bit older to loosen up and warm up and everything. So, but time-wise and my lifestyle, if I leave it till later on, then other things will come into my inbox, which I have to deal with, and there'll be, fires to put out. So I end up not prioritizing my training. So, but what I have done is created, a routine so that first thing in the morning, I make that, and I don't open my phone. I make sure I do what I need to do for myself, and I do my exercise and my morning routine, and I don't look at my phone for the first hour and a half, because nothing good happens at 6 a.m. There's nothing I need to know now that I can't find, look at in an hour's time. So yeah, that for me is very, very important. And I sort of geared a lot of my work towards that to be able to achieve that. Because I used to start first thing in the morning, training people, 6 o'clock and finishing late. But as time's gone on, I've prioritized things differently, and I know how much more useful I am to everybody else if I've taken care of myself in the morning first. I'm a much better boss, better friend, better partner. So yeah, I do really believe in prioritizing that.
I love hearing that you've carved out this sacred time and that you're really like protecting your peace. I mean, I can completely relate because I also like to work out in the morning, and I notice a huge difference on the days where I do versus the days that I don't. And exactly as you said, how you're able to show up for yourself, but more importantly, for other people. And so I kind of want to shift gears a little bit to more about strength and aging and female power and talk about, something that I think is becoming a little bit more demystified. And we were just talking about offline, which is strength training. And historically, so many women were a bit afraid to strength train. They were afraid of getting big and bulky and, often just overdoing it on the cardio. So why are so many women afraid of lifting heavy? And can you kind of demystify this topic a little bit?
Well, I think the first thing people are nervous of hurting themselves. So they think of weight training, they think of big, heavy equipment, and that makes them nervous. And there's form, but then I think people assume that weight training is dangerous because there's heavy equipment involved, but machines are set up to protect you. So you're not going to hurt yourself. It's very unlikely to hurt yourself on a machine. And you're not throwing these dumbbells around. They're not landing on you. And weight training is a very slow and controlled movement most of the time. You're not powerlifting, especially at the start. It should be slow. There should be a really slow tempo while you're moving. So it is actually very safe and very controlled. So there's the risk of getting hurt, I think people are nervous of. And like you said, the risk of getting bulky, which, I wish it was that easy. It's hard. It's really hard to gain muscle.
Okay.
And you need the genetic disposition. You need to be strong, already strong, not getting strong, but you need to already be able to lift heavy weight. You need to be able to really eat. So you have to eat deliberately for that purpose. And then it takes time. It won't happen overnight. You won't wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, what happened? It does take time. And if you didn't like how it was going or you thought you were gaining muscle, you can change it. Change the routine and change what you're doing. But it's not going to happen by mistake. I think a lot of people do know that now, though. People definitely know more than they did. Our education around this subject is much better. And also what we want for ourselves, and people do want to be stronger. They know the importance of being strong and how that impacts longevity. So we are definitely moving in the right direction. I used to have to convince women to weight train. I used to really have to talk them into it because I've been doing gyms for nearly 15 years and we've always been weight training only. I don't have any cardio equipment in my gym. Yeah, don't pay a trainer to watch you on a treadmill.
Yeah.
You can do that yourself.
Yeah, I always wonder that, by the way.
No, that's
see them in the gym.
Training.
Yeah.
So my gyms have always been that. And I used to have to convince women to weight train. And now everybody knows they should weight train, but people don't necessarily know how. So people are still nervous of knowing what to do. So I think we're moving forwards as far as the sort of body perception side of thing goes, but still a little nervous of form and doing things wrong and getting hurt and feeling silly and not belonging in the gym environment as well. I hear a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly. But also like with cardio, for instance, at least speaking for myself, I always loved it so much because of the feeling it gave me, the endorphin rush. And sometimes weight training, as you say, it's slow and controlled, didn't necessarily give that same kind of uplifting buzz. So I can completely understand. And it is good that things are shifting in this direction because you brought up a really great point about strength being imperative for longevity. And I think that generally people are starting to shift towards a perception or a dogma of wanting to have longevity routines and practices rather than, the 90s when it was just all about being see-through, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that was my parents' generation. My mum wanted the smallest bum possible, for example. She was like, that question, does my bum look big in this? And my sister, I have a sister who's 20 years younger than me, and she's literally the opposite. So I'm like in the middle of my mum's 20 years older than me and my sister's 20 years younger than me. And my sister, this sort of 20 years below, she's like, I hope my bum looks big in this.
Really?
So literally the complete opposite of what I grew up with. And, your parents and their friends and stuff standing on scales and wanting that to be as low as possible. So I think, my sister's generation, it shifted a lot.
Yeah. And how do you approach, that idea of the number on the scale, with people getting hung up on that number? I mean, obviously, shifting gears a little bit, post Olympics, you opened Roar Fitness, which is now so widely known for the most insane body transformations. So if the listeners have not checked it out, check it out. I was actually really surprised because so many body transformations you can see online, you can kind of tell it's not the same person sometimes. But for yours, it's so clear that yours are the same person. So I really want to shift gears since we're already naturally going there. How do you get women to shift their mindset about being hung up about the number on the scale?
I'm really happy you asked that, actually, because it's really important to me. And when people come in and they want to be thinner, or they want to be lighter and they want to lose weight, I will never tell somebody what they should want. Their goals are their goals. They tell me and I will facilitate it. But this mindset shift that I really work hard on, and I very rarely say it to people at the start because that's not what they want to hear. And I know the journey that they're going to go on. When you start to care about performance, then you eat for a different reason. Everybody's trying not to eat. Everyone's just trying not to eat and trying to exercise all day. And it's like, where does that go? You can't eat no food and jog all day long. It's ridiculous. So you need to find something that is more effective, and making this mental shift to stop trying to not eat. Who can live like that? What a
I don't know.
way. It's like one of life's greatest pleasures is food, and you're ruining it. But then if you want to perform, so as soon as you start to lift heavy, as soon as you start to break PBs and you start to really enjoy that side of things and you start to see those results, then you're eating to perform. You're eating to recover from your training, and you're eating for optimal health. So underlying any nutrition plan, optimal health should be the most important thing. Are you getting your micronutrients in? You just have to look at the quality of your food. So then you're eating for a much more positive reason, because you want to perform. And that's my background, is performance, obviously, from sport. So, and it always happens. It always shifts, which is it's a great moment, when people start to really enjoy their post-workout nutrition, or getting up in the morning and wanting to eat so that they train really well because they want to lift their new PB in their deadlift or something.
Well, that's something that I always feel has been the missing link from most personal training protocols or personal trainers that you work with, is that the focus is wonderful on the workout, but then there's no nutrition to complement that. And a lot of people often say that food is actually more than the training. So as part of your program, is that something that's innately embedded into how you achieve these transformations?
Of course.
Okay.
It's a huge part of what we do.
And did you learn about it from your Olympic background? Is that how you became, or how you came to know exactly what people should be eating in order to achieve that body composition?
Yeah. Well, I studied a lot, but my practical experience, and it's actually very different to how I would eat as an athlete, and how I would eat to try to recomposition my body was very different. My body as an athlete was just a product of what I did, and I was eating over 6,000 calories a day every single day.
Goodness. Yeah, 6,000.
Yeah, like 6.5.
How do you find the time to eat all that?
That's all you're doing is training and eating. As soon as you get off and you're drinking 1,000-calorie shakes, and and I was never full either.
Wow,
it's this thing that you could eat so much food and you can still feel that your body is craving more because it's so broken down and it's really fighting to recover. So it was quite easy to eat. I was a real food champion, I think. I could really pack. I can't do that now, obviously, but I could really pack the food away. But we were doing so much volume of training. It's like 6 to 9 hours a day. So you needed it. You really needed it to recover. So there's 3 areas of fitness and health, really, which are your training, your nutrition, and then your recovery. Those 3 things all need to be addressed. And if one of them isn't working, then you won't get the result. So to your point, at Raw, we do assessments at the start. So you do a movement screening and a nutrition consultation. And then from those assessments, we design the training program and we design a nutrition plan. And then everything is monitored. Everything, every rep, every lift you do is all recorded so it can be progressed every session, because you can't just exercise and hope something good happens. It has to be periodized over the amount of time that you're here. It should be very methodical. Otherwise, you could just go do a class.
Right.
Your trainer should be writing it down, everything. Every single thing should be recorded. If they don't know what you're doing in that session, you shouldn't be paying them. That's just a friend. That's just somebody standing there counting your reps for you. Your program should be planned properly with your goals in mind, and then they should be monitored. So every 3 weeks, you see the nutrition coach again. They retest you. They see how the body's responding to the plan so far, and then we can progress the nutrition and training program. Because like I said earlier, those two things have to work together. Really, really important.
Yeah, I have two polar opposite follow-up questions for this because
Sure, go on.
It's such an interesting conversation. So the first is a lot of people, when they walk into, wanting to achieve a body composition or a transformation, one thing that can hold them back is their personal life and having parties or events. And some people like to drink alcohol. I mean, they want to go out, they want to have a ladies' night, or they want to, indulge a little bit. And oftentimes, people, when they work with some trainers or follow some, nutrition plans or whatever that are, for a set period of time, they want you to eliminate that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult, at least speaking from personal experience, because then you go on this yo-yo, and it's referred to as the yo-yo dieting. You go into a little bit of a dark hole, you indulge maybe too much, and then you try to get back on the bandwagon, and you're in this cycle. So are you able to create balance for people that do want to indulge and experience, having an occasion drink or two?
Well, it depends where you are in your program and what you want. So alcohol's never going to help the result.
Mm-hmm.
I'll always tell the truth on these things. So alcohol isn't going to help you get in shape at all.
Okay.
I'm afraid. I like a drink, right? And I usually drink on a weekly basis. But I'm not trying to change my body, and I can maintain where I'm at now. And I'm always in good shape. I'm always lean. I'm always strong, and I maintain my muscle. Obviously, I know what I'm doing, and I can drink, and it stays the same. If you really want to get somewhere, or if I felt, and this is me personally, and I guess I'm coming from that athlete mindset and athlete background, if I really wanted to achieve the best thing, or I wasn't feeling good about I would do anything to change that. And if it means giving up booze for a few weeks, I mean, I don't think it's that hard, to be honest. What do you want more? If you are happier with a slower result, and it's going to take time to recover, it means you're not going to be training as hard, and that just comes down to priorities. Once you've achieved the result, it's much easier to maintain it than get there in the first place. So if you can, you do want to eliminate alcohol as one thing. You want to eliminate as much as possible, because it isn't going to benefit this process, right? But if you just have to accept, if you want to drink, by all means, go ahead, and we'll try and, make it the best situation possible. We'll try and limit the damage as much as we can, and you can still get a result, but you'll get a better result without it. I can't change that. I wish I could, but I can't. So, but like I said, it's not for me to dictate what people do and don't want, what they are or aren't willing to, but I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you how these things can and can't affect the result. And it's up to you. And we'll work our best way around it if it's something that you can't commit to. I mean, alcohol is just one example, isn't it? And it's a sticking point for a lot of people because of social life, and they find it very difficult to not do that. But I think depends where you are in life, but I don't believe in peer pressure in your 40s.
Right.
If you don't want to drink, don't blame somebody. If you want to drink. If you don't want to, you can't blame other people.
Well, it opens a topic of self-control.
Yeah.
If you, to your point, there should be no peer pressure in your 40s at all. So it really comes down to your own self-control. And as you rightfully brought up, how fast do you want to achieve that goal? And before I go back to the other question I wanted to ask, you brought up another point, which is about maintenance. And so obviously a lot of people have achieved such incredible transformations. Do you also teach them how to maintain those results? And what are the keys to success for maintaining it once you've achieved it? Because you just said it was easier to maintain.
Much easier.
Which I was surprised
Physiologically easier. I think psychologically it can be easy to throw yourself into something for a short amount of weeks and really go for it. To maintain that sort of level of discipline moving forwards is much harder. But physiologically, it's much easier to maintain the result that you got than getting there, because you have to make so many changes. If you're going from one thing to another, you have to make change. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. So, yeah, it just takes a bit of commitment.
Yeah, exactly. And so going back to the other question, what we were talking about was having high standards. You called out about different things that a personal trainer should be doing while training you and offering some friendly advice, which is amazing. And so obviously you have very high standards that you hold yourself to and that your reputation is built towards. And so what do you do when someone doesn't meet those high standards? How do you navigate that kind of a situation?
With regards to clients?
With regards to clients, yeah. I mean, because obviously the people that you have on your team, you vetted them, and you wouldn't, I don't think, hire anybody who doesn't have those high standards and meet those same philosophies that you embody with Roar.
But you can't expect people to be in the same place that you are. You know, people don't know what it takes, and we have a responsibility. People see these results and they come in and they see them with other trainers and they'll go and train with people. And if you don't do a good enough job and you're in this sort of a pickle sometimes where you want to provide good service, you want to keep people happy. So, you know, you try to nurture them and look after them, but you say, oh no, you can do that. That's okay. But you have a responsibility to tell people what they really need to do to get those results. Otherwise, they think they're doing enough. They don't know what it takes. So I have to tell them, and I will always, like I said, I'll always be honest. I'm never going to make somebody feel bad for feeling like they can't do it, or for, you know, I don't want people to ever feel like they fail, because it's all part of a journey and people aren't in my head. They don't know what I know, and they are on the right path. So you just have to try and find solutions when people have those sticking points. It's a huge part of our job is to find solutions. But like I said, as a trainer, you have a responsibility to tell people what it really takes. Otherwise, they come in, they do their thing, and they can, you know, they're relaxed, or they can eat a bit at the weekend, or they can have a drink and stuff, and then they don't get them. They're like, well, I did what you asked. So that isn't fair either. I think, you know, a little bit of tough love sometimes, but you don't need to yell at people, you know. Positive encouragement works just as well. You have to look after people.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of being, you know, a woman in business, just to shift towards another topic, what did elite sport prepare you for with entrepreneurship?
It made me resilient. 100%. It made me tough, because when you, especially in speed skating, you don't necessarily have very long in between races, and anything could have happened. You could have fallen, you could have hurt somebody, you could have raced a terrible race, and you've got 20 minutes to go and get ready, sharpen your skates, get back on and do it again. And you don't have time to sulk about it or be, you know, so you do have to turn things around very quickly, and it's not personal. And there are people you're racing against who are your friends, and they bumped you or they took you out, and it isn't personal. You have to keep moving on, and you can only do, like I said earlier, you can only do what's within your control. So, you know, with business, there's loads of ups and downs, obviously, and things that you can't prepare for. You have no idea those things, you know, around the corner. And I think so many businesses fail, not because the business isn't good enough, but because people quit, because it's hard. It's really hard emotionally, and it's your time and everything. So I think that's a much bigger reason why a lot of businesses fail. You cannot give up. You just have to. And when you train for 20 years, for a sport to win this one elusive medal that only one person can win that day, you know, you do, like I say, you do become tough. And I think you learn to take emotion out of things, even when, you know, it is personal at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all about that mindset, as we talked about earlier, and that mental grit and toughness. And for sure, I think, you know, you said something very valid about why you think a lot of businesses fail is because when things get tough, people quit. So do you feel like then that your athlete background has enabled you to push through those hard times when things have gotten tough? And are there any practices or any pieces of advice that you would share with other female entrepreneurs about how they can kind of separate out the practical from the emotional side? Because you also brought up that as a point that you kind of have to push aside the emotional factor and keep moving. And especially with, when you said, oh, you're competing against your friends and you have to, again, put that out of your mind and just stay focused on what it is. So how can women practically apply this to business? And do you have any advice that might help them?
Women's superpower really is very different to how men behave. So a lot of the time in business, men are really competitive and they will use that to drive each other and, push each other forwards. And that competition, they thrive off it. And that's where they do really well. And then as women, we're expected to step into that environment and do the exact same thing. But actually, I was going to say our superpower is that we work together. We will support each other and we will look after each other and we will listen to each other. We will say each other's name in a room of opportunities where men are always just trying to beat each other. And I understand, how valuable and how powerful competition can be. But I don't think that is where women should be looking. We should be helping each other and not trying to compete in a male sort of competitive world. We have to come together and help each other. And then we can all start moving forwards together. But it's the fact that it is such a man's world and we're expected to perform in the exact same way that they do. And that's not how we're our strongest.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Number one, first and foremost, I completely agree about women supporting women. And unfortunately, I haven't always seen that as being the case, but I'm hopeful that by promoting it more and, being somebody who helps other women, that it will have a boomerang effect, right?
Of course it does.
Because I do agree that us women, we need to band together, as you rightfully say, in this male-dominated world. And so is there anything in terms of, working with men that you could also help women understand for navigating some of those tough situations? Because, you also brought up how women are trying to operate and are being held to the same standard as men. When it is a female business owner, she's being compared to a male business owner. And so how can women kind of use that maybe to their advantage? Is there a way?
By diving into it.
Okay.
By really using our strengths and not trying to, like I say, compete with men. We're different species. We really are different and we work very differently. I'm no one's boss. I have my businesses and we're in London and Dubai and I've got a lot of staff, but I never tell anybody off. You don't need to. You set the standards and then I let them do it. My trainers here, they're amazing. They're so good. They're such a great bunch and they're really proud of where they work because if you're a raw trainer, you're good. And they know that. So they're proud of it. And I don't have to tell them what, they should or shouldn't be doing. They already know and they already execute it. And I've given them the gym. I'm not there policing it. They run it and they host it and they, like I said, they're proud. So they really look after each other and the clients. I can't look after everybody anymore, but I make sure that everybody has what they need and I make sure that I look after them and they will look after my clients then. Yeah. So it's just sometimes a different way, especially in this industry. It is very male dominated and there are a lot of egos and there is no space for that in my gym. So it's a nicer environment to be in.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly welcoming. I also really love it. And you mentioned a leadership trait that I very much value, and that is empowering others to have that autonomy and building an environment where you trust them and they are given the space to do their job. And it's really must be such an amazing environment. I have loved this conversation, Sarah. This has been so powerful. You have honestly reminded us that discipline isn't a restriction, but it is self-respect. And Supergene's high performance isn't about motivation. It's about your standards. So before we go, again, thank you so much for joining us. Can you please tell everybody how they can find you and how they can find Roar?
Well, raw, I always have to say is spelled ROAR.
Okay.
Not like raw food. It's raw like a lion. But if you Google Raw Fitness, then you will find us. We are in London and Dubai, and we have online training as well. And I'm Raw Fitness Girl on Instagram.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you feel empowered from the episode. You can connect with me at supergeneunleashed.com and on Instagram at supergeneunleashed. Please share your thoughts, and I look forward to connecting with you. And until next time, keep on shining and showing the world your super gene.